about some of the other stories with the Conservative MP Rehman Chishti. Good to see you here. What have you decided to start off?
Well, I think we've got the story in the Daily Express about our booming new economy. We've got a lot of gloom going on about the VAT going up from 17.5 to 20%. It's good to see, that the FTSE index seeing a growth in in manufacturing, looking at more people being approved to buy their homes. So it's a positive scenario to start 2011.
Yeah, the figures were for November, I seem to remember. Manufacturing up, shares soaring, not necessarily an indication, though, of what it's like for real people in their homes trying to afford the new year after an expensive Christmas.
I think what it does show is that, if we carry on doing what we did last year, then there is a real prospect of things to improve. But I agree with you completely. Things are going to be tough. We will have to make sure we take those tough decisions. But equally, we've got a lot of debt. We've got to deal with that. But I think, they say you start the year as you expect to finish it. And looking at what happened in 2000, seeing the results of 2000 and 2010, to say things improved in December, I think, we can be optimistic, but it is going to be tough.
Any wobbles within the Conservative Party about the VAT increase? Because it is a psychological thing for people, isn't it? Knowing that it's obviously more expensive for them.
I don't think there's any wobbles at all, actually, because what you have to look at, VAT is one thing. Look at the package overall. Corporation tax has gone down. In terms of national insurance, for the employer, that hasn't been increased either. So the overall package, I think the Conservative Party fully support it, and so do our coalition partners, which is very good.
Well, we'll come on to the Lib Dems' woes a bit later on, but Financial Times talks about the danger of oil prices entering a difficult period and hampering growth around the world.
I think there's always going to be uncertainty, and I think, as the report says quite clearly, the countries which produce oil, have said they're going to increase their prices, but equally, the 34 countries, the richest countries, according to the OECD, have made their representations. We have to work with them. But I think in the long term, what we have to do, we have to be more self-sufficient and reliable on ourselves, rather than reliant on those countries.
You're talking about nuclear, then?
No, I'm saying nuclear is one option, but equally, I think if you look at electronic cars, rather than simply going down the line of petrol and diesel.
You still have to produce electricity, though, don't you?
Yeah, of course, and I say, you've got to look at the whole package. So nuclear is one of them, which I think it's a constructive way forward. But equally, rather than being reliant on the Middle Eastern countries and other countries like Venezuela with their oil production, we ourselves have to do things differently. And equally with transport, look at Crossrail with trains to make sure that more people use public transport. And the point then comes to it is to make sure that public transport is more affordable, so people use it rather than having to use their cars.
The whole point, I suppose, of oil prices going up is that it feeds into inflation worries, which is really, for many economists, the big concern of 2011.
I think it is, but equally at the same time, in terms of the report in the Express, makes it quite clear we've avoided a double-dip recession so far. I think if we move on the way we do, in light of what was said by the IMF by saying the measures which have been put forward by the coalition government are right and proper, keep inflation as it is, same with interest rates, I think we can have a good 2011. It'd be tough, but I think by the end of it, we'll see the real results.
Because the nightmare for many people is inflation going up, therefore interest rates have to go up eventually, mortgages and debt goes up for them,
I think that's
the cost of their loans.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and therefore it's absolutely vital we keep, into interest rates as they are, and inflation, of course, there'll be changes over the year, but make sure that that balance is maintained.
Meantime, The Independent has a woeful-looking Nick Clegg. Lib Dem support hits an all-time low, is their headline.
I think the Lib Dems have a problem here, but equally, when you're in government in the early years, when you make tough decisions, you are gonna have that. And equally, in terms of the decisions made, have been tough decisions with the 6 billion, the emergency budget, the tuition fees. But I think the coalition government's achieved a lot, and there are coalition partners with the measures that we've been putting into place. But yeah, they are going through a tough time.
Does it matter to the Tories that the Lib Dems are sacrificing themselves for the greater good of the coalition? Is that just inevitable of modern-day politics?
I think what it comes down to is you've got to do what's in the greater good of the country, and I think in that, the coalition, when I see it on the back benches...
Well, in many of your heartland areas, you won't mind if the Lib Dems aren't doing well. That's the point, isn't it?
Do you know, I think with the Lib Dems, it's important, that we work together. I think the Lib Dems have, taken some tough decisions, but equally what it comes down to, there's a difference from being in opposition and saying things, and there's a difference from being in government. When you're in government, you have to make those tough decisions, and I think that's the Lib Dems are finding. But do I think they can come through it, and do I think the coalition can move forward? There's going to be some tricky times ahead with control orders, But I think, you know, we can get through it.
So you're off tomorrow campaigning in Oldham for the by-election next week?
I think it's a truly three-way scenario. I'm up there.
Despite the fact that David Cameron wished the Lib Dem candidate good luck, almost like saying we're not entering this race.
No, but you know, sometimes people say, you know, different things. But in terms of the commitment, you know, I know Conservative MPs have gone up there. I'm going up tomorrow. I'm going up again. So, you know, we're serious about this, and, you know, I think, you know, it's a real three-way, which I hope the Conservatives win.
OK, all the candidates listed, of course, on our website. Meanwhile, closer to home for a lot of people, refuse collections over the winter period have been a disaster for people.
Yeah, it has. I think it's completely ridiculous, you know, where you have you know, a fortnightly rubbish collection.
This is the top right, actually, you can see there. Yeah. Refuse fiasco hastens return to weekly
Completely. It should have never been the case. Now, we saw it being introduced last year by the previous Labour government. It should always be weekly. This is what local residents pay their local taxes for. They want something on their streets cleared up, and equally, it's a blight on the local communities. So I think it's absolutely right that gets looked at. There'll be issues there in terms of contracts that are being made with providers for fortnightly, but I think local authorities, you know, have to take this on board and make sure they go back to the weekly rubbish collection.
Yeah, difficult for them with the amount of money they've got to spend going down for all local
I think it is that, but equally what it comes down to is in terms of the bad weather conditions which hampered things being collected over the last month. So I think in terms of this government's commitment is to go back to weekly collections, and I think, you know, Bob Neal, the Minister, is working with local authorities to do that.
Big talking point for a lot of people, that one certainly. But Daily Star, as promised, Peter Andre, I'm in love with Lampard's ex-missus. You picked that story, and David Beckham.
Yeah, I think in terms of Peter Andre and Lampard's former partner, I think good on them. You know, the other two have both moved on, so why can't they get together? So it's yeah, it's good to see them happy, and from what I see on there, it's a new start. They say start the new year fresh. They are doing that. But the other story, I think, with Bex signing up for Spurs, I think that's absolutely fantastic to see Bex.
I don't think this is confirmed yet, though, is it? It's thought up to 14 clubs are interested in signing him, but anyway, they're obviously saying
they are.
Spurs is the winner in that.
But I think, you know, with Bex, it's not simply a footballer, it's what he does for football, a role model for football. To have him back over here, I think is amazing, and equally, I think it boosts our chances for the European Cup that's to come as well, actually.
Let's just see that Lampard story as well, in case we missed it. There we go, Peter Andre, Star, Peter's dating, Wag, Ellen Brevis. So we'll talk more about all of those stories, no doubt. Thank you very much indeed, Rehman. We will see you later for our full press preview coming out.